Okay, so here we're doing here in the Gemara on page 12b. Okay, in the bottom of the page. Says the Gemara, Rav Tuvi berei de Rav Nechemya. Rav Tuvi, the son of Rav Nechemya. Havelei garba de chamra de Terumah. A garba de chamra means a barrel of wine, a kad yayin, a barrel of wine of Terumah. And this was sitting in his garage or in his living room, wherever he was, and he never gave it to the Kohen. It belongs to the Kohen. So also Lakami de Rabbi Yosef, so he came before Rabbi Yosef. Amar lei, so Rabbi Tuvi says to Rabbi Yosef, Mahu, what is the din? Le'amtuye la Kohen ha'itna. Can I give it to the Kohen now? Can I bring the Terumah to the Kohen? Amar lei. So he says to him, Hachi Amar Hachi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So said Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi that we learned before in the Beitzah. And Rabbi Yossi is the one that said that according to Beis Hillel, you can lead even Terumah you can bring. Even though you could have done it before Yom Tov, you're allowed to do that. And therefore, go ahead, bring the Terumah. That's the halacha. Okay. The Gemara tells another story now. Ushpuzichne, the host of the Rava bar Rav Chanan. He hosted Rava, the son of Rav Chanan. Havelei asuraiso the chardela. He had bundles of mustard. The mustard was still in their holders, and the mustard seed is inside of the holders. What do they call the sharvitin? And the way they grow. Amalei. So he asked, the host asked Rabbi bar Rav Chanan, was a rabbi, a sage. He said, Ma'u lifruchi. Are you allowed to take out by squeezing with your hand the seed of the mustard from the holders in which they were laying it? So he says, he wanted to get the mustard seed. So he wanted to know if he's allowed to get the holders, the sharvitim, and extract the mustard seed. Umeichel minayu b'Yom Tov, and to eat it on Yom Tov. What was the question? Look, Rashi. Ma'u lefaruchi hasharvitin. Am I allowed to roll the holders of the and to extract the seed on Yom Tov? Mishori b'Yom Tov. Is that permissible to do on Yom Tov? Kishchita or kibishul, just like you're allowed to shecht, allowed to cook because it's for the food, you can do it. Or dilmo, or perhaps no. Kiv on the efshemet of Yom Tov, since you had a possibility of doing it from before Yom Tov, loy, we're not going to allow you to do it on Yom Tov. The tuldas dishahu. That's a prohibition because that's a derivative of threshing. Threshing, you're removing the husk from the kernel, and this is a isser of the Torah. It's a derivative of disha, and therefore, he says, am I allowed to do this or not? Well, if it was oichel nefesh and you had no choice, for sure you can do it. But since I could have done it yesterday, what is it? Lo haba biyodi. So Rabbi bar Rav Chanan didn't know. He didn't know the answer. He didn't have handy the answer. I guess he didn't have Google. He couldn't ask. So Rabbi Google, yeah. Asa lekamei the Rava. So he came before Rava. I guess this host came before Rava. Or Rava Bar Chonon came before Rava. Amar Lei, so Rava told him, he quoted him, he says, Moililin mililois umefarchin kitneis biyantiv. He says the reason you're allowed to do it, you could moilil mililois, which is by hand, that's not the normal way of threshing. That's called the dosh kilachar yadu. That's a backhanded way of doing threshing. So, therefore, if you should do the melilos, if you would roll them with your hand and take out the seed that way, that wouldn't be a malacha for Shabbos which you would be chayiv for. So, v'afilu b'Shabbos lav de'araisu elo midrabanan. So, even if you did it on Shabbos, it's not a Torah prohibition. It's only midrabanan. Yom Tov lo ygazu, and on Yom Tov they did not make the decree. What are these melilos? This is not the same as the mustard seed. These are talking about, Rashi says, sholchitim. These are wheat, the wheat, and you're getting off the husks from them and the outside, and you're separating it. Shemoilel biyodov kishem rakim. He does it with his hands, and removes them when they're soft, so he can do it with his hands. And that's for on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, it's not a Torah prohibition, but on Yom Tov, even though you could have done it from before Yom Tov, the rabbis allowed you. The same thing is, umefarchim kitniyos b'Yom Tov. Mefarchim is also to take apart these kitniyos, those are the legumes. So now it's also a form of threshing the legumes. You can do that on Yom Tov because it's kilachar yad. It's not the usual way. Even on Shabbos, it's not min haTorah, only with the Rabbanan. On Yom Tov, there's no gezeres. Okay. The Gemara asked the kasha, Eis ve'Abaye. So Abaye asked the question from another Beitzah. It says, Hamoilel melilois me'erev Shabbos. One who was taking out by hand from before Shabbos the wheat. So it says lemochor menapeach meyad liyad boichel. So the next day he can blow. He blows from one hand to the other hand. That way he gets rid of the husk. So I guess when he has to still separate him. So Rashi says, Gabi Shabbos garsinon miyad liyad. He does it from hand to hand. V'oichel can eat. It's even on Shabbos. He split it before Shabbos, but on Shabbos he can blow it from one hand to the other hand and get rid of the shell of the husk. And that
Wouldn't that be an Easter Midiraisa for Shabbos?
That would be if it wasn't done in the way of kalachar yad. Rashi says miyad liyad is shaloi keder achoil. That's not in the weekday. I guess that the issue over here is not threshing. Over here, maybe the issue is boider to sorting out. I'm not sure what happens after the after he is moilel. What happens with the piece? But apparently, it's mixed in with the peel, with the psoilus, and by blowing it from one hand to the other hand, it's allowed. Let's see weiter. Avaloi bekonin. A konin is Rashi said, what's a Kohen? Kelihu. It's a kind of a vessel, which Roshei Echod Rochov, the one side is wide. I guess you put it in the whole thing. Vasheni Osu Kein Marzev Kotzer. The other one is made like a narrow pipe. V'noisnim hakitne is betoicha rochev, and you give the legumes in the wide side, and it comes with all the peels on it. Umananeya, and he shakes it. V'oichel mizgalgel derecha marzev, and the food that's more pleased that rolls by means of the pipe. V'apsoilas nishabekeli, and that remains in the vessel. In the corner, it remains the other thing. So that's a professional way of clearing the legume from its peels around it. You can't do that. And also below the tamchui. And not in a tamchui, which means a kaira gedola, in a large plate. I guess that's also maybe the usual weight. Put it in a large plate, and then you separate it in there, I guess. And then it says further in the Beitzah, Hamoila melilis me'elev me'erev Yom Tov. But if you did it from before Yom Tov, so lemachar menafeach al yad boichel. Menafeach means it blows. This is not the changed way. But al yad here means a little bit. He blows a little bit and can eat. He can do a little bit at a time. Al yad zokt Rashi ma'at ma'at. It means a little bit. It's not in a changed way. Do it a little bit, and he can do it afilu b'konin v'afilu b'tamchin. As long as he does a little bit, he can use the tool, the usual vessel, and even b'tamchin.
I thought Tamku is a soup kitchen.
That's also in this case a tamchin means a big plate. Rashi touched before. I guess because they served there with plates, they called it a tamchui over there because it's so that's why probably what it got the name. But you can't do it in a tableau that's a big on a tray. Why can't you do it? Because the mirzi, I mean, he's still doing the same little bit at a time, because that appears commander ovid letzerach mocher. This seems like he's doing it for the next day. She'ein derech lasis bekelim halalu elarbe. Because in these vessels, Rashi means tabla. Because if you're going to use a tabla, kelim halalu, why is Rashi saying plural? Because I guess there's several kinds of tablas, over there. So the Rashi says that most of the time you do. So even if you're going to do a little bit, it doesn't look right, and that's not you do harba. Or actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. Not betabla, not benofa. This includes the other ones. The tabla is the tray. Benofa is a sift. Kavara is another kind, a thinner, a different kind of sift. That's the end of the Beitzah. Okay. So over here, basically, you see in the Beitzah that when did you do the sifting? You did it from before Yom Tov. And then he allows you to blow it or to use the tool for Yom Tov. But why does it say only Merev Yom Tov? Merev Yom Tov ain't. So the question is only Merev Yom Tov. It says Merev Yom Tov in, Merev Yom Tov in, Hamoila Merev Yom Tov Kotoni. It says he was doing the Melila from before Yom Tov and not that he was doing Yom Tov. Or on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to. And the Gemara says, no, Afilu Tema B'Yom Tov. It's not excluding Yom Tov. Don't learn not Yom Tov because it includes also Yom Tov. So why does he say Erev Yom Tov? I did the Toni Reisha, Erev Shabbos. Since it says in the Reisha from Erev Shabbos, Toni Sefer Nami, Erev Yom Tov. That's why it says in the Sefer also Erev Yom Tov, just to be the same. Because on Shabbos you're not allowed to do it at all, but on Yom Tov you can do Melila. This you can do it even on Yom Tov. Like he told him, he brought him the other Amalei. He told him Moilim Melilas Ufarchim Kitnes B'Yom Tov. So that's a brayso too that he quoted him. But he asked him that it's a contradiction. So he says not a contradiction, even though it says he doesn't have Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, but it's not to exclude Yom Tov. It's just because of Shabbos, so he says Erev Yom Tov. Frag the Gemara. So the Gemara says, in Cain, so that means since you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov, so that means when are you mechuyev to give Terumah once it becomes into the it turns into a grain. It only turns into a grain after you clear it off from the rest of the junk around it, after the thing that it grows around it. So if we're allowed to take off some of the husks, some of the psoilus on Yom Tov, so what is the first opportunity that became obligated in Terumah? On Yom Tov. So we find an obligation of Terumah. The whole time we were saying in the Mishnah, Terumah cannot be done on Yom Tov because you know Terumah doesn't start at Yom Tov. It always starts before Yom Tov. But now we found you a way that Terumah should start in Yom Tov because the obligation of Terumah is once you remove the husk. Let's look at Rashi. Im kain motzinu Terumah shezakai b'haramoso. So we find a Terumah which you're entitled to raise on Yom Tov. So the question is, Im kain Rashi. Im kain the moilim b'yom tov the moilim melilas b'yom tov. If we're allowed to do the melilas b'yom tov, motzinu Terumah shezakai b'haramoso. So therefore we find a Terumah in which the person is entitled to raise it, meaning to do the separation, raising of the Terumah on Yom Tov. And Rashi explains, the stam shibolim, why does he have to wait till Yom Tov? So Rashi says, stam shibolim lemafrishim Terumah ad sheyod yasu dogan. Generally, if you have these stalks of the wheat, you don't give Terumah until they become grain. And if you are taking away the husks and making them grain on Yom Tov to eat them, so now you have to separate the Terumah because otherwise you won't be able to eat it. So we find the Terumah that happens now. But what did we say in the Mishnah? Tanan, in the Mishnah it said no. In the Mishnah it says, when they were arguing to the Rabbanim, they say, Imamartem bitruma shenezaka baramose. They say the reason why Terumah is not allowed to, is because he's not allowed to raise it, but he is allowed to raise it. So now we have a very clear scenario in which the Terumah becomes on Yom Tov, so he's allowed to raise it. And the Gemara says, Lo kasha. This is not really a question. Turn the page. Rabbi Yesi ben Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara is going to bring a machlokes now between Rabbi and Rabbi Yesi ben Rabbi Yehuda, whether we need to give truma from the melila that we do to the grain, or maybe we don't have to give truma from that. And the Gemara says that according to the opinion of Rebbe says you're obligated. Rebbe says you're obligated to give truma from those grains. We'll see in a minute. The Gemara is going to bring down the Beitzah. You have to give truma from those melilos that you separated and Yom Tov, and therefore, this truma. So that's why, Taka, we find truma that you can. That you only can do it on Yom Tov. But Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Rashi, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Really, I will tell you that the melilos you can do according to everybody. You asked Akasha before, because melilos that we should have truma. It seems that there should be a machlokes, because why do we say, he says zakai baramosa? So he says udekashilon im kein motzinu truma zakai baramosa, and the fact that you're asking me, so you find truma that you are entitled to raise it, to separate it on Yom Tov. Aim. That's true. Badai motzinu aliba de Rebbe the Omar yesh truma b'melilos. We find that that's taka true. Umas nisin de katoni loy motzinu, and the Mishnah that says that loy motzinu, that's the basic Rebbe the Omar ain't truma b'melilos. So the Mishnah cannot go according to all opinions. It goes like Rebbe. The author of the Mishnah, Rabbi Danosi. But he taka holds that there is truma b'melilos, and no. So the Mishnah does not go like him. And according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, so it depends. Do you have to give truma from melilos or not? So when our Mishnah says that lo motzinu, we don't find, it's talking about a situation according to the opinion which says that you don't have to give truma. But according to Rabbi, it's taka, we do find the Tanya, London Beitzah. Hichnis shibolin lasis mehen isa. If a person brought into his home the shibolin, these stalks, he wants to make a dough. Oichel mehem arai upoter. He can eat temporarily from them. Kozman sheleidoshen umorcham b'kri, as long that he didn't thresh them, and he did not clean them up and in the heap. Their work for Terumah has not been finished. You still more work to do with this grain. And before that, you're not mechayev Terumah. What about Lemoil?
Can you eat that?
No. What he wants to do, he's going to take out the grain. He's going to grind it, and he's going to make it from them. But he's not threshing it, and he's not sorting it out. He's just taking out the grain from the individual stalks. Okay, so
I
that's
guess that's what whole wheat is.
I think even whole wheat takes off some of the outside, not everything. That's the bran, or that's out on the. Not sure exactly. But what about he brings them in l'maylam b'melilis? He wants to do it by hand. L'maylam b'melilis Rashi chnisom la'ochlam ma'at melilis. He brought them in to eat them little by little by rolling them. So Rabbi Mechayiv, Rabbi says you have to separate Terumah. Can you do that? And Rashi explains Rabbi Mechayiv b'Terumah shelo yechol mehem arai, cannot eat temporarily ach yafrish, until he separates the Terumah from them. Because when you bring it in with the stalks, that's finished. That's all the job you're going to do with them. She'ein soifon lovoi lidei kohen achad, because they're not going to get into a further. There's no further work with them. This is the kohen. This is the final stop. And therefore, you have to give Terumah from the Melilis. Rabbi Yosef Ruda Potter, because it says the Goncha Ksim, because the pasuk says the Goncha, and V'hainu Meruach. That means when you wipe down, you take the heap and you get it all. This is the Meruach. The Ein Digun Elo Kibuz Bikri. When you say Dogon, Digun is when you get it in the heap, not when you bring in a few stalks in the house. That's not called the Goncha. That's not Digun. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So frag die Gemara, uparchinon lerove. But even according to Rava, parchinon lerove, so now we're asking according to Rava. Dom harmoilelon Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Nami. Isharis lemoilelon b'Yom Tov. That even according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, even if you're going to allow him to mashkachas al korchach, we're still going to find shezakai b'meriv. There's still way, because we're talking about different scenarios over here. He said Rabbi Yosef Yehuda is poiter, but even according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, Shezakai baramose, that there is sometimes that he will be entitled to be raising it, because he'll be chayiv sometimes, even though b'melilis he says it's poter. B'melilis shichnisom lasus isa b'disha umiruach. If he has melilis that he brought him in to make a dough, he was going to thresh him, and he's going to be meruach them. V'nimlach aleihem lemoililom. And then he changed his mind that he wants to remove by hand. Ulatzniin kulon lemlilis. And hide them all from melilis. In this case, the al-korchoch moidi b'hu Rabbi Yosef the tivlom b'yem shenimlach aleihem, that they become tevel on the day that he decided. Since he decided that he's going to use them for melilis, he's chayiv. Because when he brought him in, they became a tevel that day. The kivon dichnisson l'shem goyden gomur, since he brought him in for a full goyden, because he was going to thresh it. Yordalem teires trumas umaisris. So they already have the laws of Terumah Maestros. Ukshenimlach lemoilelon nasizach nosas goyda. So that is like bringing it into the goyden. So before, if you mail Yom Tov, first it becomes Terumah. The Terumah already became when he decided. So the obligation is now. So we always have a scenario that your obligation of Terumah becomes on Yom Tov. How does the Mishnah say it doesn't go on Yom Tov? The way we answered this before is because by Melilas Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not chayiv betruma, but Rashi points out from the Gemara is asking on Rava, but even Rabbi Yehuda will agree that if you brought him in l'chatchila to make the disa and then you change your mind, you would have to, if you're Melech, you'd have to give Terumah. So why does the Mishnah say that you don't find that case? The Gemara, you also find a way where you're going to be obligated today in Terumah. How is it going to be? Kigoin, Shechnisom Shibolim, Lasid Mem Iso, Benimlach Aleim Lameilam B'Yomtiv. He brought him in to make Shibolim, and he decided to do the Melila and Yontif. The Tabla B'Yemeh, at that day they became Tabel, and you have to give Terumah. So what does it mean? So therefore we should be able, what does it say that there's no Terumah on Yontif itself? Then when I answer my Terumah, Reif Terumah, doesn't mean that all there is not. But my Terumah, it's Reif Terumah. Most of the Terumah, most Terumahs don't happen this way. So when the Gemara says not Zakai Baramosa means this could be exceptional cases. Elamai Terumah Reif Terumah is a Karasina. The Legora Maislach Lamemer. Elo. Loi Teimo. Horabi Yisi. Doesn't go Rabbi Yisi that you don't have to give Terumah. The main Rabbi and Rabbi Yisi Betukma. You can go according to both of them. My Terumah, what does it say that is not the Terumah? That Namas Nisa in a Zakai, Baramosai. Mishnah says he's not entitled on a Mosai. So the answer is Bereif Terumah is Ko'amar. Sheyesh non Aidei Disha Umiruach. Most Terumahs, the way you do it is you thresh them and you miruach them, you straighten them out. And that's done from Erev Yom Tov. Okay, I think we're going to leave it over here now. And because as you see, I didn't do it any further at all. This was from the past. And we'll continue in this next time.
Okay.
Now,
next week is Purim.